Hey, this is Martin Hurlbert. I have Nicole Herway on this call with me today. Nicole, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of your credentials and work experience?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I'm an LCSW. I work as a psychotherapist in my private practice. It's called
Mhm.
Herway Counseling. And people do often ask, is that my real last name? And the answer is yes.
Hmm.
Um, and I focus on relationship trauma. So it can be marital, familial, friendships, anything like that. And then with a specialty also in divorce counseling. So I help people figure out if they should stay or go, work them
Right.
with them through the process of divorce, and then also post-divorce recovering as well as new relationships post-divorce.
All right. I bet you've seen quite a bit in your work,
Yes.
in your line of work. So here's what
Yes.
I'd like to do. I do believe that there's a lot of, I think, misinformation out there. There's a lot of kind of raw emotions when you're either thinking about going through or even post-divorce. So I'd
Mhm.
like to hear from you. What are the one or two things that people do prior to, during, or after divorce that kind of shoots themselves in the foot, hurts them and hurts their family? And maybe they don't even do it intentionally, but they do. So what are some things people should avoid during that
The
process?
first one I recommend is catastrophic thinking. So that's where you get a bit of information and you take it and you magnify it and make it really big. And so that's pretty common when
Uh,
people are in the divorce process, either preparing for it or going through it, and even afterwards, where they'll get a text or information or they'll get served and their brain goes to worst case scenario.
mhm.
And we often talk about if you're going to go to worst case scenario, then you have to balance it out by going to best case scenario. And then we land on talking about what's the most likely scenario. And it's just a protective thing that the brain does, which is totally normal. But a lot of people fail to move through catastrophic thinking to more realistic thinking.
Yeah, and I think you kind of answered my next question. How do you go from catastrophic to not? You say it's just do catastrophic positive or kind of extreme
Sort of.
positive?
Yeah, kind of allowing the opposite teeter-totter to do its thing. So if you're going to go to catastrophic thinking, I always tell people that's biologically normative, right? And so we do
Right,
that as kind of a protective mechanism. So I usually tell people not to try to stop the catastrophic thinking, but rather to just notice it. And as soon as you do, acknowledge it for what it is, and then balance it out with some best case scenario
right.
thinking. Then, either in therapy or you can work on it with yourself or a loved one to try to come up with a most likely scenario. And so you can be making decisions for what's the most likely outcome of what's happening.
Right, right. Humankind survived as a species in large part due to negative thinking, right? As the ones who are the most pessimistic, that's definitely a lion. That's not a wind in the bush. That must be a lion. They survived. It was the
Yes.
optimists that who got eaten.
Yeah,
So
and actually, I would say it's rather the realists who survived because the optimists
yeah.
definitely got killed off, but then the pessimists also folded in on themselves and didn't
Mm,
actually take action appropriately. And so I always say it's totally normal to have that thinking initially, but you
right.
cannot stay there.
Good. I thank you for correcting me there. I think you're exactly right. It's the realist who survived. So it is normal. Anything else you think you see people do a kind of a common mistake, or should we go on to what we should be doing?
Let's do a few more of the mistakes. One of them
Okay.
is we definitely want to encourage people to talk to loved ones to get support. Definitely, reading blogs or listening to podcasts and just getting more information
Hmm.
about the divorce process because, yeah, it's not something we're trained to do. There's a lot of premarital counseling and
Right.
a lot of people talk about marriage, but not a lot of people talk about divorce. And so I just encourage people to be mindful of who they talk to and how they talk to them.
Hmm.
Sometimes people don't share anything and they keep it all inside, and then they have internal combustion going on emotionally. And then sometimes people say everything to everyone, and that also causes problems on the other end. So, along the same lines, just to be moderate in what you share, to try to open and share with people that you trust, and to be mindful of what you choose to share versus what you would share maybe with a therapist who could have confidentiality
Mm-hmm.
because you don't want to make things worse, but you also don't want to keep it all in.
Okay. Now, suppose you're sharing with someone and they engage in that catastrophic thinking as well, like, oh yeah, he's a jerk or she's a jerk, and I can't believe they're doing that, and they kind of almost enable that. How
Mhm.
how how do you deal with that?
I tell them to prep their friends and family ahead of time. So I usually
Ah,
recommend people start with just one person to give it a go, and then we would role play in therapy how to have that conversation. So, like, let's say my friend's name was Betty and I was the
right.
person going through the divorce. I would have my client practice saying, "Hey, Betty, I'm going to tell you something. And for right now, what I really need from you is just to nod your head and listen. And I don't want there to be any bad mouthing or anything. I just need you to say things like, wow, this is really hard. I'm so glad you're telling me this." And then
Mm,
all I need from today's conversation. So you kind of prep your friend because obviously they
right.
haven't gone through therapy of how to support a friend through divorce either. And so if I can prep my client to prep their friend or their loved one, whoever it is, then that's a good start.
Okay. And if by chance a viewer or a listener is that friend, take note of what Nicole
Mhm.
just said. You be supportive without, yes, magnifying or catastrophizing whatever they're saying. That's
Mhm.
great advice. Anything else you want to share on the kind of what to avoid side?
I think that's a good start for anyone.
Okay. Then what are some
Mhm.
things that people do that work well for them that help both them and their family to
Mhm.
get through it with least amount of damage and also rebuild and start that new life?
Yes. So, the first thing I would recommend is taking care of the basics. So, keeping yourself well nourished.
Right.
Sleeping is one thing that a lot of people struggle with, and so maybe they might need to give extra care to how early they go to bed, how they relax. I've had some clients shift their schedules because after 10 p.m. Their brain goes crazy and they can't sleep, so we
Mm,
shift their bedtime up to even 8:30 because they're so tired.
wow.
So whatever it looks like to get adequate rest and nutrition, and then to remember to move even if it's really hard. A lot of people say like, I just can't move. I say it doesn't have to be exercise, just stretching, even if it's in your seat at work. And then also
Mm,
getting sunshine is vital, and proper hydration. So I
right.
know it sounds really basic, but you'd be surprised how quickly those things drop off when
Right.
things get crazy.
I agree. I think whether it's sports or business, it's those who master the basics that really tend to succeed, right? And get
Yeah,
to the higher
yeah,
levels. Anything
yeah.
else you would recommend that people actually do?
Yes, I would take a little bit of time to find a good professional. So it's not uncommon in my field to have someone find me when they are quite far along in the divorce
Hmm.
process. And a lot of that is because, we think, okay, I'll divorce, and we have this kind of surge of resilience that comes in appropriately when we go through divorce, but it can isolate us from the appropriate
Yeah.
professionals. And so if I were to talk to anyone who's considering divorce, I would say take your time to go meet with financial advisors, find a good therapist, find an attorney who's very responsive to you.
Hmm.
Because during the divorce process, you're going to need a very responsive attorney.
Right.
Um, and so if you get your team assembled, right, kind of like the Marvel comic concept, you need
Hmm.
your team first before you go into battle rather than being in battle and then assembling your team afterwards.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I did a survey of 52 people who've been divorced for more than 2 years, and those who said they talked to a therapist or a financial planner, they all said it was worthwhile.
Yes,
And many
very
said
much.
they wish they had done it sooner. So I think yes, I like that. Get your team in place because you're going to need it. It is divorce is not easy,
Mhm.
and it
Yeah,
may or may not be appropriate. And I'm not going to make that judgment call for anyone, but
mhm.
it's just no matter even I think an amicable divorce,
Yeah,
it's still going to be challenging and it's going to be hard. So yeah, you need that support team. Absolutely.
yeah, absolutely, I agree.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate this. And I hope people will watch this and learn from it. And if you know if someone's going through divorce, share it with them to learn from Nicole Herway. Thanks for your time today. I hope you enjoyed the interview. If you or someone you care about is currently going through a divorce, or perhaps their divorce has been final now for a number of years, please refer them to the website, utahdivorcenavigation.com. For those going through divorce, there's a free document called 101 Tips for Creating Clarity from Chaos. It will help you save time, energy, money, and grief during the divorce process. For those whose divorce is already final, there's another document called What's Next? Smart Money Management. It's about rebuilding your new life once the divorce has been final. Please share this video with others and thank you for watching.